thank you so much. I am, again, like Audrey, appreciate this opportunity. Never in my life did I think that I would be on a forum like this, that nothing happens by accident. And so here we are, all of us meant to be together and to learn about a country that at the southern tip of Africa, Auro and I get to call home, and proudly so. I call myself an ordinary South African, but I suppose it's not true because all of us are really absolutely extraordinary, just the fact that we've been created. What I, as I said earlier on, absolutely appreciate every single day of my life is the fact that I was born and get to live in Cape Town. I always covered a bit about the beauty of Cape Town, that the two oceans, you know, and that's my happy place, by the way. A little place called Surfers Corner, which is world renowned for surfing. Also Jeffreys Bay, which is further down the N2, one of our national roads, toward the Eastern Cape. So one of my happy places is Surfers Corner, and it's a 10-minute drive away from here. One of the most beautiful things that I encourage people to do is actually take a local train when it runs from Muizenberg to Simonstown, which is our naval base, and you have the Indian Ocean on one side and the mountains on the other. It is, and this is an objective truth, one of the most beautiful train rides in the world. We also have our own little Monaco, where you could actually drive over Chapman's Peak and get into the city from the southern suburbs. It's so beautiful. I literally feel like I want to cry every time I'm on that drive. So those are reasons, really, just in terms of the beauty of, and we're talking about Cape Town in particular, but of course there's just the whole of South Africa, and the climate's very different. For example, KwaZulu-Natal has a tropical climate. So it's, yeah, tropical. Whereas Cape Town is a Mediterranean climate, which is a lot more comfortable in that we don't have extreme temperatures. So our winters are long, windy, wet, and our summers are beautiful, also somewhat windy, but temperatures averaging 25 degrees Celsius, which is extremely comfortable. And of course, with all the beaches around, there's opportunity to take a taxi like people often do. In the township close to where I live, people get to walk down the road and they walk to the beach because it's there for the taking. Interesting also, when we were growing up, the very beach that we could visit during the colder seasons, we couldn't visit in summer because that's when a lot of white South Africans came from Gauteng up north. And so people of color had to stay off the beach because we offended other South Africans. So that really, really messed with one's mind as a child, not understanding why that was the case. But such was the law of apartheid as we experienced, and as our parents experienced, and our grandparents experienced, and very especially in terms of being displaced. People who have built their own homes were forced to leave those homes and be put on the Cape Flats, which is rather barren, away from the city center, the port. And as Alroy rightly said, that people of color get to spend 1.5 to 2 hours getting to work, and it's quite expensive to do that. In fact, I've actually heard people comment that they're not going to accept a particular job because it was going to cost them too much money to get there. So in the end, they'd actually be working just for transportation, which is really quite sad. As mentioned, I worked mostly as a travel consultant, and I absolutely loved the opportunity to have people come to me and I could share with them about where to go, obviously depending on where they wanted to go, but mostly outbound travel. The people have always come back, and I know personally as well, when I get back from being out of Cape Town and I'm on the national road called the N2 and I see Table Mountain in front of me, I always greet my mountain and say, hello, my mountain, I'm back. So it's just a place where I feel grounded. It's a place where I was born. And I suppose all of us have that kind of feeling about home. But it is different to actually live in the country of one's birth, I think, because all the networks are there. You know, people that I've met as a child, friends that I went to Sunday school with are still friends of mine, and we get to see one another quite often. And it's always around food, like Aure was saying. Food is extremely important, and because of the lovely spices that we have, it's a culinary delight to have homemade food. And something that I also realized as an adult was, you know, I could never understand why people were always thronging to our home. It always looked like it was a funeral because there were so many cars parked outside, so many people here. And it was really because of my mom's homemade bread, raisin loaf, donuts. And because we actually weren't allowed to go to restaurants, being people of color, we had to create our own social circumstances, our own opportunities to get together. And so that also spurred the practice of people getting together around food in one another's homes. And so it completely makes sense to me now. But also, now that we are able to go to any restaurant that we'd like to, we still focus a lot on getting together at people's homes because you can have endless cups of coffee, bottomless coffee without paying for it. And there's no checkout time. There are no tables that are going to be packed on top of, chairs on top of tables because you need to go home. So we can get to visit with one another for a long time. So essentially, I am a proud Cape Townian. I think that people who come here always fall in love with the place, and it's also because of the people, the Ubuntu, the fact that people get to share of the little that they have, they share with others, and that makes a big difference. A lot. I was actually visiting a friend in North Carolina not so long ago, and she mentioned again when she was living in Cape Town, which is where I met her, that having all those meals at our home is what made her stay in Cape Town, in particular, as memorable as it is. So that is me, really. A wrap from me. We didn't get to share some of the presentation that I had, which featured some beautiful photographs of Constantia Eitzig, which is a wine farm up the road from where I live. Again, in case with beauty, the 1685 that farm was started, and also the wine and slavery going together jointly. So it is almost impossible to talk about South Africa, Cape Town, without bringing in the history that shapes where we live and how we live, even today.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that to both of you. So thank you. Very real. Because sometimes we have these discussions and we don't really get a chance to speak to people who are on the ground and have watched the whole transition of a country take place. So as I said, please share if you'd like to share them. So as I was saying to us earlier, if I live in England And my desire is to return back to the continent. And this is our motivation for having this discussion on different countries in Africa. You know, Naomi, what would be the single most attractive reason for me to say, you know, I'm in the last third, or some may be half or quarter of their life, and they're fed up of living in Europe. And some of us have tried our best to live in an environment where in every 100, you know, we represent 10 persons, right? And we want to try and flip that now. We want to be in a country that's governed by our own people, as opposed to always trying to, you know, fit in elsewhere. What would you say to me? What would you say to Abdul Hakim as a reason why I should come to South Africa as opposed to, you know, Nigeria, as opposed to Ghana, as opposed to Gambia, as opposed to some of the different countries in Africa? Why South Africa?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I can only answer it subjectively. So I have a number of friends who actually live in the UK and have become citizens. And whenever we talk, the first thing they would ask is what the weather is like back home. Because they are freezing out there. They still struggle to get used to the cold weather. And so, quite honestly, as I heard that question, that would be the reason to come and live here. It is pleasant. You know, we don't have central heating in our homes because it's not really needed. We don't have those extreme temperatures that you have up north. And it's because the weather is so great. Sometimes our temperatures plummet down to, you know, 3, 4, 5 degrees in winter, and then we have to wear our 4 layers of clothing inside. But by and large, we don't have the snow and so on. But by and large, the weather makes a huge difference in terms of people's overall happiness. I mean, you look at the face of somebody in the Mediterranean, and you look at the face of someone living in Russia, for example, and there's just a completely different demeanor there, simply because of the weather.
Okay. So the weather is the main attraction, right? Is that what you would say?
It's definitely one of the main attractions, absolutely. And Alroy could probably add on here, but it's there's also So I spoke to Tera a little bit, well, a couple of days ago about living here. And a lot of other Africans that I know that have moved here are people really who are not white-collar workers. White-collar workers apparently have brilliant opportunities to teach at our universities. We've got the top universities in the world located here in our country, UCT being one of them, university that we weren't allowed to study at the time because it was reserved for white students only. We studied at UWC, the University of the Western Cape, was for coloreds. But now that the universities are open, oh my gosh, look at that.
Where is that?
So that is the harbor area, which is just outside the city center. That is the stadium on the right, that white building that was especially erected for the World Cup was it 2017, I think.
So for me to live in this area, Naomi, if I wanted, say, a 3-bedroom house, maybe 1,500 square foot, what would it cost to live in an area such as this in pounds or US dollars?
Oh my goodness. Somebody would have to help me with the conversion, but
we can do that.
In the region of $4 to $5 million rand.
4 to 5 million rand. Can someone
Yeah.
just do the conversion, please, into sterling?
So that's six
Divided
vehicles.
by 18, yeah.
No, sterling would be 22 maybe. 22 rand to £1 sterling.
200,000? That's not much, is it?
Everybody says that, but to us it's a fortune.
You said it's a fortune, Eric.
Yeah, because you see,
Yes.
Abdul Hakim, we can't afford to buy property in our own country. I visited a friend on Saturday.
Yeah, but I wasn't talking about you, Naomi. I'm talking about
This is true.
Jeffrey
This is
and
true.
some of the other rich British people on this line.
Yeah, I forget
And
that.
the rich Americans. That's what I'm talking to. We have them from all over Europe on the line. So, you know,
true.
with somebody say living for context, then Naomi, you know, a 2-bedroom apartment, maybe 800 square foot here, would cost you about 350,000 pounds. That's not in central London, and that's beside no water. No lake, no 23 degrees on an average day. We're talking about, you know, just regular 2-bedroom apartment. Now you're speaking about, you know, lagoon, you know, overlooking mountains, blue sea for 200,000.
In this time, we had no time for stressing. In this time, we should all be investing. Getting knowledge should never be rejected. Every week, did you get the message? Get your ticket today, don't take a second. Every Thursday, get 7. It's time to make this earth into heaven. So need to worry, there's a blessing. No need for second guessing, it's cause spiritual injection. It's a spiritual.